Hey, Joe Mullings, how are you, sir?
Good, Tom. How are you? Good to be back on with you, my friend.
I know we were swapping texts over the weekend, and I figured, well, let's talk on Wednesday. Things will be crystal clear on Wednesday. I don't know if I actually thought that. I don't know, it felt like 3 weeks ago, number one. I can't believe it's only been 3 days. Number two, I'm not sure how clear things are from my perspective, which is why we have you on the program. I know you're talking to a lot of folks about Silicon Valley Bank and the aftermath. People have the access to their money. That was the primary concern, but I'm not feeling a lot of clicking of heels out there. People are really a little uncertain. How are you viewing things? And more importantly, what are you hearing from the folks you're in touch with?
So you're right. I think on Friday it was one of those things. I don't know if you saw that Burt Reynolds, Dom DeLuise movie of
Cannonball Run?
no, it was the one where the final scene was Burt Reynolds was about 400
Oh,
meters out in the ocean and he couldn't swim, and Dom DeLuise was with
the
him.
end? Was it the
The end,
end?
yeah. And every time they got a little closer to the shore, way out there, Burt Reynolds said he'd go to church every day. He would give up his swearing, his drinking. But as he got closer and closer to the shore, the negotiations became a lot different with the end. So I think on Thursday, I got my first, I'll admit
Uh,
this, I got my first tweet from a VC at 2:12 p.m. on Thursday of SVB's going under, get your
oh my
money out
God.
now, right? And so we know what transpired over the next 48 hours. And then I started to get a barrage of texts and phone calls at Sunday night. I was watching the Players Championship. It was right at the end of it. And it was the government backstopped SVP, which was the proper thing to do.
Yeah.
Regardless of what your opinion is of the venture community and everything else that went on,
Ugh.
independent of that, it was the right thing to do. So I
I,
think everybody had their primary wish sort of granted. They're having access to their money, but it does a little reminiscent of the end. Is now they're bitching and moaning, um, where 48 hours before, if not before. So, look, this is what I'm hearing, and these are the questions to ask. Uh, SVB was, I don't think it was an outlier situation.
hmm.
Um, it was a convergence of a number of things. And again, I'm not a banking expert, so let me put that out there. But this is what I do know. You've got a bank who had primarily one business model that drove its behavior, right? A very, very, very high risk environment of organizations that don't necessarily churn off revenue. They have these large sums of money sitting in the bank to make payroll, and in our world, underwrite clinical trials and underwrite development. You've got eight interest, and the way the bank hedges against that is that interest rate spread. So they're buying mid and long term vehicles they're locked into, um, and you've got eight interest hikes in 12 months. What did you expect to happen? And then
Yeah.
you toss into that. I love the venture community. They are a large part of my customer set. And I also tell them they all have lemming like behavior. What one does or what three or four do, the rest follow, right?
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
so
Me Too investing is a thing,
that's
or at
it.
least,
Is
yeah.
it's you can look at that in the robotic world, you could look at that in structural heart, you could look at
Yep.
that in all of that. Is if you got a chip in that game, I've got a chip in that game. But the scary thing is the venture capitalists communicate primarily in a very viral fashion on Twitter, and a very viral fashion on, I'd say, eight or 10 of the top VCs probably control 80% of the investments out there right now in the medtech community. So once they got that signal, and whether you want to put it on Peter Thiel or you want to put it on anybody else, once they got that signal, the run occurred.
Yep.
And it's easy to armchair quarterback that. But what I think this is going to introduce right now, Tom, is a distraction for the next 90 to 120 days with things just as simple as, look, my vice chair had millions of dollars at SVB. He got it back, and now he's spending some of his time trying to figure out how do you make these micro deposits that will be insured over time. And now, are
Mm.
you going to have a whole bunch of banks, or is all that money going to go to Chase or BOA?
Right.
Um, and so the next 90 days is going to be playing defense, because that's what we do as human beings, is we harden targets against the thing that almost just killed us. And then therefore, if attention is a resource and money is a resource, um, anybody who planned on pitching to a VC over the next 90 days is going to have competition on a survival mechanism that their boards
Yeah, you're right.
and their investors are going to mandate that they take care of. And this is not an easy thing to do. So I think that's what we're looking at. And that's what my VCs and my startup clients and partners are contending with right now.
So if you're a company looking to raise money right now, you're in trouble. You got some waiting to do.
Well, you had waiting to do anyway.
Yeah.
But I hope your deck has a slide. Like I'm at LSI, Scott Pentel's LSI next week, and
Yep.
I'll be at Device Talks as well coming up. I can guarantee you everybody is putting a slide in their deck now on fiscal prudence and fiscal responsibility and what their strategy is going to be on banking moving forward.
So do we have a new C-level position at these startups?
Well,
Chief, I guess that's a CFO's job, but that's a
yeah,
whole
yeah. I
moving
think
moving money around to multiple accounts seems like another position.
well, startups most of the time don't have a full-time CFO. So if I'm a CFO, I'm getting into the interim CFO business right
Yeah.
now, and I'm forming my LLC on Monday morning, and I'm getting my CPA out there, and I'm putting my pitch deck together for let me come in for 10 hours a month to make sure that you're backstopped, and let me interact with Chase and BOA, because in the past you were able to run down the path, the well-trodden path with SVB because you
Right.
already had done dozens and dozens of deals with them. Well, now you've got new introductions, you've got new pathways to sort of pave. And so I think that's going to slow things down in the venture community. It will not stop them. In fact, I think, and this is too easy to say, it'll be a healthier environment because the big banks will do a better job of safeguarding against things like this.
What about I was talking with a VC just about SVB's role in sort of driving venture lenders to be a little more competitive and a little more eager to lend to startups and younger companies. Without that force there, are you getting a sense that venture lending is going to be difficult as well?
Yes, I just don't know what degree. So the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Look,
Yeah.
I've got a banking relationship that I put out there it's 32 years with the same bank, and my ability to expedite things and have them know me, whether it's purchasing another building, equipment investment, studio growth. We just made an acquisition. We closed on Friday of another search firm. Those skids being greased have an immeasurable amount of value to me as an owner and an investor. And so that juice in the game that people had through an SVB is going to be somewhat mitigated over time. Now, I still, again, I think, and I think it's good for the device world. I think it's good for medtech, health tech, just not right now. Not right now. And in an environment that already was hostile.
Yeah. And it's interesting that we've talked. I've been through a few of these, but they've always been sort of a larger macro crisis that a big storm that we're just a small spot getting hit by. This seems like a really targeted problem at the innovation economy, and I know SVB is still there. It seems to be a shadow of itself. I don't really know the particulars of it. I don't know if someone still needs to buy it or what, but I don't know how you can weather a larger storm, I think, but when it's something that's hitting you so directly, it's going to take a long time, I think, to work our way back to a place where there's a new bank that's doing what SVB was doing, or multiple banks, hopefully, doing what SVB is doing. It doesn't seem like a quick fix.
No, I don't think it's a quick fix because there's going to be hesitation across the board. There's relationships that have to be made. There's trust that has to be formed. In a business that brags about move fast and break things and fail quick, I don't know if that's the prescription that we're all going to use any longer in the startup world. Look, you nailed it. In the past, we were a secondary or tertiary impact because of the housing crisis or because of the dot-com bust. But this came as an acute event out of our ecosystem that then became a contagion for other community banks or smaller banks inside that 16 that we sat with SVB. So we have not had to deal with this before. The medtech industry in particular, life science industry, but medtech, I'm going to stay where you and
Yep.
I, really our hearts are, is we have never been the reason for the failure. We have had to deal with the failure, the economic failure, because of other categories or industries. We are the catalyst for this right now. And in some cases, candidly, I think the current administration just delayed organizations' ultimate outcome because we got our money.
Hmm.
And I think some of these startups were heading towards a less than optimal outcome even before this happened. But I
Wow.
think this is going to expedite it now. And you always need these prunings. Look, it's terrible for our business. It's terrible for your business.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just managing through it right now. But I think this is the very first time medtech has ever been the primary instigator of an event. And so it will be interesting to see how people pony up and own it, how people take care of the ecosystem itself before themselves. I read a great article about SVB, and my heart goes out to all the people who are at SVB and what they
Sure.
did amazingly for 40 years. And I'm sad to see the backs turned on it as well. I mean, I've got no skin in that game, full disclosure, no money in that bank, but it certainly was an important component of why our industry is so amazing.
Sure. Absolutely. All right. So to wrap up, feels I feel like I'm hearing CEOs of startups are looking inward and culling programs and tightening screws and making sure they're maximizing every dollar. And VCs are probably doing the same thing with their portfolio, giving it a harder look, seeing which ones we can live with and which ones we can live without. Is that sort of where we're at right now?
Yeah, and that was happening before last Thursday afternoon, Friday,
Yeah.
but it's especially sort of confirmed now. And you may see an entire mess of 10-year funds having to terminate a B or C round investment where in the past they may have kept it on life support for either IP or hoping something else was going to come down range. And I think you're going to see people who are willing to take a lead on an investment absolutely won't even be able to do that right now over the next 60 to 90 days because of the situation we went through last Thursday and Friday.
Okay. And I should have raised this before. Lastly, last time you were here, we talked about the big companies and the reductions in workforce we were anticipating there. This isn't going to help that. Any feeling as to whether this is exacerbating that problem, whether it's a just different part of the economy, it's not going to make it better or worse? I know a number of the med techs had banking with SVB, but I don't know what degree. Some had venture lending from SVB. But how do you see this impacting medtech workforce on a larger cap, sort of publicly traded scale?
I don't see it impacting that much at all. I think
Okay.
that die was cast. What I do think, though, is you're going to see an uptick in M&A activity. So I think on the strategics, they might be getting in earlier, where in the past they were waiting for clearance on the FDA and showing an uptake on sales. I do think that they're sending some products and platforms out to pasture and going to double down on the others that they know are their core competency. So
Mhm.
I think all in all, the big strategics, this doesn't hit them very hard. But with that, they termed a lot of their, or riffed a lot of their, what they refer to as R&D people, creative product developments, and have sort of taken those off the balance sheet. And that tells me that they're committed to now having to acquire that technology externally. And I think all in all, that is a positive outlook over the next 6 to 12 months that you can look forward to.
All right. Well, it's going to be an interesting conference season with LSI coming up in Device Talks Boston in a month or so. So thanks for the insights, Joe. Look forward to having you back. Hopefully with some good news. It'd be great to talk about some good news sometime.
Always, my friend. Appreciate the opportunity.